Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about exception handling. Now there are two ways which we can handle exception in a Spring Web application. One is locally and two is globally. Now, when we talk about locally, there are two approaches. One is using the @exception handling annotation, and this is one which we'll discuss in this video. And the second is using the response status exception class starting from Spring 5. Now let's use the @exception handling. So if we go to our get1people and we call the API with an ID which doesn't exist, we have this 404 not found, but I want to not have it being coded here. I want it to be thrown as an exception. So what we can do, we can go to here. I'm going to create an exception package. I'm going to create a resource not found exception. This is going to extend the runtime exception. I'm going to add this a status code, and here I'm going to add a constructor with the message from the runtime exception and my status code. I'm going to add some getter, and here in my person controller get1, here instead of or else I can use or else throw, which is a method from my optional class which we have in which the find first is returning, and here I can use lambda and throw a new resource not found exception, and I can put the message resource not found, and the status code is HTTP not found and the value of it because I need the number. So now when I restart my application and I go to the Postman to make this API call, you see here that I have an internal server error. Now why is that? Because my exception is being thrown, as we see here, but I am not properly configured to return as a response body. So to do this, as I said, we need to use the @exception handling. So to do this, I'm going to create here a method response entity which will return my resource not found exception. Handle resource not found. I'm going to put my exception here. Return new response entity, my exception, and my HTTP status not found. And we can use this @exception handler, and as a value we can add our custom exception. And what Spring will do behind the scenes is whenever this exception is thrown, this method will be executed and it will return this response entity instead of this one. So let me just restart and do this, and as you can see, I have my custom exception being thrown. Now this tag trace is because of me extending the runtime exception, but here we see our message and our status code. So this is one way to handle exception. Now I can delete everything from here, and I can just return person service get1 ID. I don't have to do that manually check every time, because whenever we don't have a person, it will automatically throw this exception. So now it's much more cleaner for me. Now I can also delete this logger. And now when we go here, I have the same response. I think I can also do that here because I'm using the same. Yes, I'm using the same method get1. So I can also delete this from here. So person service update 1 person ID. So now it's much more cleaner for me. And you can see we have our request mapping methods which are returning okay, but whenever an exception is thrown, particularly this exception, we have this method which is going to be executed. Now this is one approach. In the next video I'm going to show you a much more cleaner way.